guys. Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today's another fantastic day for an interview because I've got Candace Plattor with me. Candace is a woman who is so close to my heart with her topic because she is talking about the addiction as a family disease. And she's focusing on the families, the people, the loving people around the addict who sometimes can be a problem in their own. And I'm here today to discuss it with Candace. So Candace, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Stefan. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Candace, thank you so much for joining me today and spending some of your valuable time because
I'm happy.
You're a very busy woman, being out there actually helping addicts and their families to see what is really going on. But how did you actually end up in that situation? What is your background? How did you come to that point?
Oh my gosh, you want my story? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, the pertinent part of it starts in the early 70s when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Most people know what that is now, but it's an inflammatory bowel disease that's very hard to manage. It's painful, it's debilitating, embarrassing, all that stuff. When I was diagnosed with it, the doctors, it was kind of the new disease on the block, and the doctors really didn't know what to do for me. In fact, some of them thought that it was all in my head, which it wasn't. But what they did, because they didn't know what else to do, is they gave me a lot of addictive medication to take. And I like to believe that they didn't know what they were unleashing upon me, but I know that there's still a lot of doctors are still doing this. So that's, don't get me started on that unless you want to talk about it. But, they gave me Valium, benzodiazepines, they gave me opioids, they gave me codeine and OxyContin and Demerol and morphine, and just gave it to me and kept refilling the prescriptions over and over. And it was coming from the doctors. First of all, I was a good girl at the time. I'm not anymore, but I was. And addiction wasn't on the radar then. Certainly not the way it is now. And so if you fast forward about 15 years of this, I was basically an opioid addict for 15 years without even knowing it, without knowing what was happening to me. And these medications, I also smoked a lot of pot because that helped and I liked it. So I smoked it. Mm-hmm. And all of those medications, all of those substances are depressants in the human system. They're not like cocaine where you're, happy. They're depressants. And so after about 15 years of taking them regularly every day, I was so depressed that I actually was suicidal and I wasn't sure I wanted to live anymore. And I was starting to feel that pretty strongly. It scared me. So I knew I had a choice to make. Was I going to die? Or was I going to reach out for help and try to figure out how to live? So that's what I did, obviously, because here I am. But I reached out to the crisis center here in Vancouver. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, one of the most beautiful places in the world, if not the most beautiful place. I reached out. Yeah, it's beautiful here. So I reached out to the crisis center, and that person, I don't even remember if it was a man or a woman at this point, because that was 35 years ago. And that person said to me, you have a choice. You can either keep using these substances or you can stop using these substances. And that was like the most empowering thing I had ever heard. I didn't know how to stop at the time, but I thought, I don't have to live like this forever. So on the advice of a psychiatrist, I'm really nutshelling this, but on the advice of the doctor, I signed myself in to a psych ward here in Vancouver. And I was there for about 4 weeks. And at that time, the psych ward looked like cuckoo's nest, with the gray slab concrete walls. And but while I was in there, because I was afraid that if I had my clothes, if I was able to get out into the world, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I would stay alive. And so I just needed people to take care of me at that point. So while I was in there, I met 2 other people who were trying to come off drugs and alcohol. And we used to sit around a table and, and then we'd pass it and we'd try to pretend it was real, but it was fun and it passed the time. And
right.
It was
for a moment, I thought you had smuggled them in because
no,
you wouldn't be. You wouldn't be the first one, because I mean that's the very first thing that a rehab hospital does is basically go through your clothes, go through your baggage and everything, because you wouldn't be the first one who's got their supplies there. Okay, sorry.
No, it was absolutely make believe, and we did it very well. But these 2 people were going to Narcotics Anonymous across the street from the hospital at the nurses' residence every single day at noon. And so I started going with them. And, I would sit in those meetings and just weep. I would just bawl my eyes out. And there were bikers there, like real bikers with tattoos and leather and chains and effing this and effing that. And, and I just kind of sit there in shock and cry. And then they would come up to me later and they'd hug me and they'd say, keep coming back, which is not something I heard in my own family often at all. So it was really it was an amazing time, and it was the beginning of my recovery. So that's how I got into recovery. And next month I'll be celebrating 35 years clean and sober.
Woohoo! Wow.
Yeah, and I still have Crohn's, but it's so much better because I've learned how to take care of myself. It's
exactly
one of those incurable things, I guess.
Oh wow! And see,
so
Candace,
do you want me?
No, Candace, this is exactly what is so important to realize, because those of us who have seen the darkness, we are so keen to get into the light, stay there, and show others that it is possible. And that is exactly what you're doing. That's why you are convicted, why you are resolute about your path. And that is what makes you true and honest in your appearance. You're not someone who has read a book. Oh yeah, that sounds good. I could do that. I could do a bit of psychology. No, it is.
No.
we have been in the darkness, and
we have been in the darkness. Yeah.
Hell yes. But and again, it is for younger viewers and listeners. Quick history recap: in the 70s, medicine was different. 70s, 80s, around the world. Doctors had very little clue about addiction. We didn't understand that it is a disease. We didn't understand that there are so many factors influencing it and how powerful it is. This was a time when everyone smoked, when everyone drank, when it was all normal. And in Germany, there's a whole generation of women who were ending up a bit stressed, go to their doctor and say, yeah, here's some Valium. That is absolutely here. You go for it, girl.
And the Rolling Stones wrote a song about it, a great song, Mother's Little Helper.
Oh, here you go.
That's all about getting that Valium for the mothers and for the, I know women were totally addicted to it.
Absolutely. And that was, we had no idea. We thought at that time addiction is something that you don't need to do. You look down upon. That is a behavior. That is your choice kind of a thing. Nancy Reagan later on in the 80s, just don't do it. And that bullshit. We had no understanding. So let's not be too hypercritical, because we need to see it in the context of history and in the context of the knowledge of the doctors that were there at the time. Nowadays, this is a very, very, very different different thing. Your doctor will consider maybe at times to give you an opioid, but there will very well be very clear guidelines. There will be a contract between you, the doctor, your GP, and maybe a pain specialist. There will be a very different story happening if you were a person who actually does need morphine or morphine-like drugs because you're in such severe pain that otherwise life is not worth living for you. But that is only a tiny amount of a far more holistic approach where we help you with psychology, physiotherapy, other non-opioid versions of painkillers. So when you look at pain medicine, that has evolved by magnitudes.
Well, it has, and also there are doctors who keep prescribing these drugs. So it has changed a lot. And there are also doctors who keep doing it. And I think they are aware of addiction in a different way today. They'd have to be, and they're still doing it. So I have an issue with that. That's another podcast show, maybe. but well,
Candace,
it is still happening. Yeah.
Candace, you're on. We do a separate show because we both are passionate about that. And let's actually talk about the black sheep in my fraternity and why, for example, 80% of the illegally prescribed opiates are down there in the Florida panhandle. Sorry, is there so much pain down there? No. Let's talk about those things. And I've had guests on where we discussed the fentanyl crisis, where we discussed all the current trends. So yes, guys, look forward to that. Candace is coming back and we're going to kick ass and we're going to actually dive into the opioid epidemic as it is right now, but also
as it is right, yeah,
indeed, as it is now, but also historically how it actually developed, because you cannot look at something without knowing the background why things have happened. So, Candace, you're coming back. But let's come back. I bring you back and bring us back to the topic today, because ultimately, addiction is a family problem. It's a family disease.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. And I don't know, do you want to know how I kind of went off and just told you my initial story?
I do. Keep going.
So once I got out of the psych ward, because they did eventually let me out, which was a good thing. I needed about 3 years or so to get well, from the Crohn's, from the addiction. I think I needed to clean up so I could see how sick I'd been. That feels like the right, way to put it. And so about 3 years into my recovery, I wanted to get back to work, and I wanted to work in the addiction field because I wanted to give back what I had been given. So I was offered a job as an addiction counselor in the downtown East Side area of Vancouver, which is the lowest income area of Canada. It's where most of the alcoholics and addicts and homeless and people with mental health congregate. So it's that area of our country. And I loved being there. It was a big culture shock for me, but I loved working with the addicts and the alcoholics. And I was afraid every day that somebody was going to steal my car, but I loved the work that I was doing. So I was there for 16 years.
Wow.
And for the first couple of years, I was just working with the clients that came to our agency. And then those clients' families started to call me. They got in touch with me and they said, we don't know what to do. We're just at the end of our rope. We're so frustrated. We don't know what to do. We're afraid they're going to die. They're here at 2:00 in the morning, pounding on the door, these kinds of things. And they want money, and I don't know whether they give it to them. What if I don't give it to them and they die, and all that stuff. And I had no idea at all what to tell them. But what I did was I invited them into sessions. I started having sessions with the families, with the family members. And sometimes they were friends or, colleagues. It wasn't just family, but people who loved addicts. So as I was listening to them, I heard patterns of behavior that started to give me a roadmap of how to work with them, because they were enabling the addict that they loved so much. And my simple definition of enabling is when we do something for somebody else that they can and should be doing for themselves. So they were enabling. And an enabled addict, what we know now, they don't recover, because why should they? They've got everything handed to them. People are doing things for them. People are driving them to the liquor store. People are letting them live in their house and be really nasty and punch holes in the walls when they're angry. And this is not good for the family. This is not good for the addict. To me, enabling is not a loving act, because it keeps addicts stuck in their addiction. There's not a lot of incentive for them to change anything. So I started working with the family around other strategies, other things that they could do to be able to actually help the addict get unstuck from the addiction. And it wasn't easy, because sometimes these family members were kind of addicted to their enabling behaviors. They were addicted to the addict. Mm-hmm. It's like they're on the roller coaster with the addict, just sitting right next to them. And when the addict is up here doing well, they're doing great. When the addict isn't doing so well, the family members aren't doing so good either. And so that had to change. There were just a number of things that needed to be different for recovery to be able to happen in a family. So that's how that happened. I didn't go out looking for it. It kind of got dumped in my lap. And I'm happy with that. I mean, obviously I was meant to do this. And I think because my family, I come from a family of addiction, they were pretty self-absorbed. They didn't care a whole lot about me and what I was going through. They wouldn't have come for counseling to help me, right? But for me to be able to work with families who will be willing to do that kind of work and love their addicts that much to do that, I love being able to do that. I love watching a family just bloom.
How beautiful is that? And you're quite right. It is. There are so many facets to what you have just described, though. There is the enabling, but there is so much more to family dynamics. There's all the core beliefs. There's all the things that have happened in those enablers' lives that is determining
That's
how
right.
they behave. And
That's
so therefore,
right,
you can't just focus on the addict. Let's get the addict right, and then the whole family will be so nice. Yeah, right.
That's right. Because, and what you're saying is so right. It's so true, because so many of the family members who have enabling behaviors, they're people pleasers. They really want to, and actually when somebody's a people pleaser, another word for codependent, and it's a buzzword in the addiction circles, codependency, but really what codependency is about is when you put other people's needs ahead of your own on a fairly consistent basis. So your needs go on the back burner. And so sometimes people who are doing those behaviors think, well, I'm so nice. I'm just such a nice person. Why is everybody always treating me so badly? Really, the people pleasing is about self-protection. It's about self-protection, because people who want to please other people do it because they don't like conflict. They hate conflict. They don't want to be in situations where somebody is going to be angry with them or frustrated with them or disappointed in them. And so they learn how to say yes when sometimes they really need to be saying no. And so I need to work with the family members around that. What's it going to be like for you to change what you say, what you do? How's that going to feel? It's really scary for them. But they know they need to do it because the addict isn't going to be the one to come to them and say, please set some healthy boundaries for me, right? Like that is not going to happen. Maybe later when they're in recovery, they might come and say, thank you for having done that. But it's a thankless job to be the loved one of people with addiction and do it well, do it in healthy ways. Thankless job. Yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done for the addict and for the family. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No. You're so right. You're so right, Candace. And you're obviously the situation that you're talking about is that the addict is still living with the family and is still active in his addiction. He or she is out there showing the behaviors that are not so nice, yet we want to help this person. After all, that's the core statement here. We believe that really those people who come to you are really still interested in the addict and
having a relationship But no, I work with families where the addict isn't always living at home. When they're living at home, it's kind of easier because you have the families have more leverage in terms of boundaries, healthy boundaries that they can set. But I was working with people who were on the street, but their families were still coming and visiting them and giving them money and driving them places and doing that kind of thing, which just wasn't helpful at all. So it depends. Some people are still with their families and some aren't, but most of the families I work with, the people that they love with addiction are still in active addiction. Yeah. So then I started to realize that I wanted to help more people than I was able to help, because what I was doing with these families was working. And the addicts were starting to sit up and take notice and say, uh-oh, this isn't working for me as well as it used to. I might have to change something. Oh dear, And so the families started to get healthier all together. It was a wonderful thing to see. And so I knew that I was onto something. So I wrote a book, or the book kind of wrote itself, actually. But I wrote a book that won a number of awards, USA awards and international book awards. And I was so surprised by this, because when we're addicts, even in recovery, I mean, I never thought I'd ever do anything that was going to make the world a better place, ever. It never even occurred to me, because the self-absorption, the pain of being in addiction, right? But this is my book, and it's called Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. It's the top 10 survival tips for loving someone with an addiction. So I wrote this book for the loved ones, not the addicts. Don't give it to the addict. Don't give it to your addict, because they hate my book. They hate my book because I'm talking about boundaries. I'm talking about, things that they don't want the loved ones to do. So, yeah.
Very, very, very true. Let's stick with that vein, though. So it is. Let's do an example. Addiction is such a broad thing. Addiction means you try to escape your reality, and you do so with the help of either chemicals, that could be alcohol, smoking, harder drugs, or it could be behaviors such as gambling, eating disorders, these kind of things.
Porn, overspending,
exactly.
All kinds of things.
Exactly.
All kinds of things.
So what would you say to a parent who comes to you and their 20-year-old son still living at home and is spending virtually 12 hours a day on internet games and is really very focused on that? With that, he has got a bit of a community. After all, there's the modern games. There is actually some interaction there. People are playing together. But ultimately, there is no drive towards anything else. But there is this focus solely on the gaming. And he's taking pretty much, this person is taking pretty much all the addictive, the substance use tick boxes, keeps doing it despite the fact he knows it's not really good for him, and self-isolation, moving away from other things. What would you tell a parent? That must be such a common scenario out there.
It's pretty common. I've been working in this field for 30 years, so I've certainly had that scenario happen. And I'll just preface it by saying that there are people who think of my book as tough love, and tough love has gotten a really bad rap, because tough love is love. And sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for somebody, I think. So prefacing it with that, I wouldn't necessarily tell the family what to do, but I would explore with them, like, for example, where is he getting the money to buy all these video games? Whose internet is he using?
Okay.
The reason that this is happening is because he's being allowed to do this. You have been allowing him to do this. So what might it be like for you to call your internet company and see how you can shut the internet off when you're not using it yourself, so that just isn't available to him? He may want to go out and, maybe get some training and get a job.
Very nice. Very nice.
So it's, and really, the bottom line there's a couple of bottom lines for me. But the bottom line in working with the families is for the families to be able to say to the addicts they love so much, we love you. And we love you so much. And we realize that we've been doing some things that haven't been good for you. And we're sorry about that. Like, what person would not want to hear his parents make an amend? So we understand now. We've been getting some help, and we understand that we've made some mistakes, and we're really sorry about that. And we love you so much that we've decided that we're not going to support you in active addiction anymore. It's because we love you, not because we don't. And it's also because it's breaking our hearts. It's so hard for us. I think addicts need to come out of their own self-absorption and understand that they affect the people around them, right? So we've made a decision that we're not going to support you in active addiction, but we will support you in whatever ways we can. If you make the choice to go into some kind of active recovery, we'll be there for you 100%. And I tell them not to go into it 101%, just 100%. Don't work harder than the addict, because that goes back into enabling. Right? So sometimes what that means is if you're not willing to play by our rules in this house that we pay for, that you're kind of a guest in because you're 20 years old, then you may have to go, and using hesitant language, not get out, you have to go. But, we might have to look at that. We might have to look at you not living here. If you decide to go into active recovery, then we can look at maybe you coming back, but we just love you too much to support something that's bad for you. So we're not going to do it anymore.
Beautifully said. Beautiful choice. Yeah.
That's the other bottom line for me, is that whether we see addiction as a disease, whether we see it as, a genetic predisposition, whether we see it as nature versus nurture, however we see it, underneath all of it, it's a choice to stay in it. We didn't choose to become addicts. I don't know anybody who did. I certainly didn't. But once we're there, we know, I'm sure you did too, Stefan. We know as addicts that our lives aren't going so well. We see people around us who, maybe the same age as us, who are married and children, and they have a job and they have money, and they seem to be happy and they're healthy. And we know that. We know our lives are a mess. And so when we get to that place of knowing that, that's when we can make a different choice. There's so much help out there for addicts. Not a lot of help out there for their loved ones, which is why I do what I do. But there's so much help out there for addicts, so much. So at that point, it becomes a choice about whether you stay in active addiction or you go into active recovery. And every one of us, millions of us who know, who are in recovery, we know we're making the choice to be in recovery. Whether we think we have a disease or not, or whatever we think, we know we're making the choice every single day, which I've done for 35 years. And of course, I don't have to sit here anymore and think, I'm going to make a choice to not use today. But sometimes at 35 years, I look outside at this beautiful day in Vancouver, and I live by the water, and I have a view of the water. I have not always lived this way, trust me, but I have a view of the ocean. And I think to myself, oh, this would be such a good day to just go to the beach and smoke a joint. And then sometimes my brain will say, no one will know, but the most important person in the planet would know. I would know. And so, sometimes those feelings come up. I don't know if they ever completely go away, but I make a choice to stay clean and sober because life is so much better.
Which is beautiful, isn't it? But that is coming from a person who is now living the life, and this life is not suddenly there. We actually work on that life every minute of the day, and it's as you say, these are not always. Oh, these are very rarely conscious choices. I'm 8 years down the line now, and there are, however, times when, I could murder a glass of wine. Oh, yes, please. And it just comes
and that's
up.
a normal thing to think, I think, for somebody who's been in addiction.
Absolutely.
I think that's and why me? Why can't I have a glass of wine? Why can't I smoke a joint sometimes? And then we get into the tantrum. But I'd like to show you my favorite mug, which I happen to have here. It says, "Live a life you love."
Yes, that's exactly
it. What's the point of doing anything else? What's the point of living any other life?
No, you bloody rebel, you. We have been indoctrinated by generations that you go to work, you are who you are at work. There's certain achievements, standards, and crap that you set yourself. So now we need to relearn a lot of values for ourselves. We need to relearn how to look after ourselves in the very first instance. And very, very few people actually do that. And certainly in, let's say, I'm mid-50s. If I look around the people that I work together with, that I sort of bump into in my life, there is one tribe, there's one group that I meet through my show, through my actions, and these are people who have seen exactly the light and the necessity to actually look after themselves. If I look, for example, at my work, there are the heart going, no, bang, 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 bang. We're going to work. And then we're going to boom, bust. And there is this kind of behavior there. So this is, regrettably, the reality for so many out there. And some of it is self-constructed. These beliefs they have taken on the core beliefs that in order to be something, they have to work really, really, really hard, 120%. Other things that is put upon them. There is, even if you don't like to work, if you're a single mom with 2 school children and you're trying to do 2 free jobs.
That's work. That single mom with 2 kids or whatever, they're working.
Hell
Unfortunately, society doesn't give them that.
Oh, please. Oh, so when you're saying staying at home, no, I'm thinking about the young mom who is balancing the children, who is running to two different low-paid jobs in order to make ends meet. Of course, she doesn't look after herself. She barely has the money scraped together to feed the kids. Yes, as if she was able to live healthily herself. So please.
And that's a horrible situation that our society perpetuates. It's just... It's ridiculous. Yeah, but it definitely exists. It's all over the place.
Exactly. So please don't come back to me and say, oh, you and your head in the clouds. How the hell can I look after myself? You might find...
I have a chapter in my book, actually the longest chapter in my book is about self-care. And what it says, the title of that one is that self-care does not equal selfish.
Oh,
and
very
so
nice.
a lot of times, loved ones, male or female, but especially female, because we are taught to give and give and give until we're so depleted, and we're taught to absolutely never be selfish. How can you be selfish? To me, there's a difference between selfish and selfish. And selfish is somebody who says, I want what I want it when I want it right now, probably with a swear word put in there. I want it right now, and I will climb on, I will just, I will hurt anybody who gets in my way. Now that sounds more like the self-absorbed addict, and that sounds more like selfishness. We're talking about, there are ways for people who are in the situation that you're talking about to find some even small changes that they can make to start taking care of themselves. It doesn't mean that you have to have $100,000 to go on a yacht and have a vacation. There's a lot of ways that we can be taking care of ourselves that will make our lives so much better, and they're small changes. And one of the most important ones is to learn about self-respect. In my opinion, self-respect is the most important thing we either have or don't have, and there's a difference between self-respect and self-esteem in my view. Can I just explain that for a minute?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So with self-esteem, it kind of comes from the outside in. It would be like you saying to me, oh, you're so great, you're doing so well, all this stuff. If I think I'm doing well, then I can have that and I can take that in. But so many times when people compliment us or stroke us, praise us, we don't believe that about ourselves. And we kind of look at that person who's saying it like, are you nuts? Like, that's not who I am. With self-respect, it comes from the inside out. So we do the work that we need to do to really get to know ourselves and really get to like ourselves. We talk about loving ourselves. Let's like ourselves first, and what do you need to do or not do to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be okay with who you see? Like how that self-respect develops when you do the next right thing, and then the next right thing after that, and then the next right thing after that you can pat yourself on the back for and feel good about. That's how self-respect starts to grow. And people who are marginalized, or like the mother you're talking about, or any kind of marginalization, people who don't believe in themselves have such a hard time with this. And it's so important to do the work inside that it takes to respect ourselves, because if we don't, other people won't treat us respectfully either. We have to be respecting ourselves to be able to get what we want from other people. If we don't respect ourselves, why should anybody else respect us?
That's the key thing, isn't it? And when you're in addiction, you don't see that. I remember myself saying, why are you so disrespectful to me, to my family? I work so hard, yet I was probably not the nicest person. And, I take all the blame for my own behaviors. So this but then on the flip side, now I can see that it is an ongoing journey, journey. My family was away on holiday recently, and I stayed home because we were hit by COVID, money was tight, etc. So I said, look, I stay at home, I work my guts out. You guys actually have a bit of a nice time out. During that time, now no longer needing to immediately look after my family and being there for every Tom, Dick, and Harry and every brush fire and chaos that arises in a family. And I suddenly had a week to actually look after myself and actually put boundaries around my own well-being, looking after myself, eating those things that I wanted and that my body needed, the good stuff, the healthy stuff.
So not a bunch of Fritos or anything, not a lot of corn chips. Like
No. I'm talking actually, hey, I want to eat something. My family doesn't, my wife doesn't like spicy. I like spicy any time of the day. Yeah. So I started cooking some really nice food for myself. And it was such an act of love to cook for myself and to actually show me the respect. And I cleaned up the garage and I felt good about it. And I raked up the leaves and I felt good about it. And it was that I feel, wow, did I just do that? Wow, okay. And I was always pissed off that I come home and there's mountains of dishes there. And I washed up every evening and I looked at the kitchen and it was clean. And it was, oh, that's my kitchen. It's clean. I like it. Yeah. And it's little things like that. And it was so beautiful. Right. And it was, but it's all compound interest. You do one thing, oh, it's not bad. Next thing, tiny little things. And within half an hour, you have done 5 things that make you feel good. Guess how you walk out of that half an hour? You think, okay.
Well, I teach people how to pat themselves on the back. And the way you do that is you put your arm out. Want to do this with me? Put your arm out.
Oh, that's turn
your hand.
Oh yeah, okay, that's over. Better. Come on, in Germany, put the arm out. Okay.
Yeah, that could be misconstrued. But put your arm out, turn your hand over.
Yeah, I shall do that.
Bring your hand back.
Bring your hand back.
And pat yourself on the back for everything that you can think of. Everything, even the little tiny things. We need to be respecting ourselves. We need to be validating ourselves, and it just feels so much better to do it that way. So,
yes. And that's the start. Doing those little things, and
then we teach our kids how to pat themselves on the back. I think kids love this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's where the star charts as a little one come in, and it would be so nice if we keep going. But then, what do you do if they don't earn their stars? That's again where we come in a circle to your maybe tough love to stop enabling, because if they don't.
Well, what you do is you talk with them about choices. If you do your stars, I'm using your language, but if you do your stars, if you do what you're supposed to do, this will happen. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, this will happen. Which one do you choose? You say to a little boy, a little girl, you need to go put your toys away and clean up your room. And she says, no, I'm not going to clean my room. And you appreciate her spunk, but she needs to go clean up her room. So you say to her, okay, and maybe she'll even throw in I hate you, you're a horrible mommy, right? Just for good measure.
Exactly.
Because they know what that feels like as a parent. So you say, okay, if you have a choice here, little 4-year-old, if you clean up your room, you can come out and have dinner with us and ice cream and watch TV. And if you don't clean up your room, then you're going to have to stay in your room until it's cleaned up. So up to you, and I'll leave you here for a minute, and you can think about which one you'd rather have. When you approach people that way, and they understand the boundary and they understand the consequence and how it can work better for them, because there's really always a what's in it for me thing. Why should I clean my toys up? Well, this is why. Why shouldn't I use addiction anymore? Well, this is why. Okay? Then the person can start making choices that they want to make, not for somebody else. You get people going into rehab, for example, or even AA, 12-step programs for somebody else. Doesn't work well for very long. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, very good. Very good. And I like the way that you're using the word tough love, because it has got such a bad rap, and it is such a bad thing. I think the setting boundaries is such an important bit, and setting boundaries we are all so bad in, and therefore for you to be part of a family where there is addiction inside your family is actually a huge privilege. It's a huge opportunity to grow. If you look at it from that angle, you would certainly have not chosen to be in that situation. But now that you're in the situation, you are outside of your comfort zone. And with hindsight, 5 years down the line, you will probably think, wow, if I could go back and change things, many of the people I meet say, actually, I wouldn't change a thing, because it made me the new person. It made me the new person who I am right now. And that person is so improved compared with the version 1 that was then. That is amazing.
I would make one change. I would make sure that chocolate didn't have any calories. I would definitely make that change. Right.
Then you would still hunt the sugar high. You would still want the dopamine that comes with the sugar high.
Oh,
Come on.
No. If it's not chocolate, it's not worth it. That's kind of how
Right. Okay, I can go with that.
But when we boundaries are fairly easy to learn how to set. There's a certain way to language them, and I help families to learn how to do that. But a boundary without a consequence that means something to the addict is just words. And too many people have said those words without follow through too many times. So, you get a mom or dad who says to their addict, you can't use in this house. I don't want you using in this house. And there's no consequence for whether they're going to use in the house. They're going to keep using in the house, because why not? So there needs to be, like with the child I talked about before, does the consequence mean something to that child? Does she want to come out and have dinner and have ice cream for dessert and watch TV with the family? Is that something that's going to mean something to her? Probably so. So when you're going to set a boundary, the boundary is you need to clean up your toys. The consequence is this is what's going to happen if you don't. Make a choice. Make a choice. And let's teach that to children from a very early age.
I like that.
It's a cause and effect universe, whether we want it to be or not. We make the cause, we get an effect of that cause, and that's just how that is. So
it's such a basic truth, but we are all shying away from those confrontations, and it is so important. But what you're doing is you're not just being mean, you're actually setting boundaries. You're setting love into concrete, so to speak.
You're doing it because you love your child.
Absolutely.
You're doing it because you love the addict, and you don't, otherwise we're preparing children, we're preparing people for a world that doesn't exist out there.
Exactly.
And how can that be loving? How can that be a loving act? They grow up, they go out into a world they expect to be enabled, they expect that they're entitled, and how long is that going to work for them? Till they wind up in jail or psych ward, jails, institutions, and death. So let's do the right thing for the people we love, and let's do it for the right reasons.
Candace, you're an amazing woman.
Let's kick addiction to the curb, man. Let's just do it.
Love the addict, hate the addiction. And that's right. But love the addict by setting boundaries. That's so true.
That's right.
So true.
Yeah.
Candace, show us again your book, because that's out there. You've got all this beautiful information in there.
And I also have a workbook that goes with the book. And it's won awards too, again, much to my surprise. But here's the book, Loving an Addict. Yourself.
Perfect. The top 10 survival tips for loving someone with an addiction. Beautiful.
Yes. And if you're in the situation or you know somebody who is, please don't give up. Please don't give up. And know that, I mean, addiction is so rampant now. You walk down the street, and even though people don't have a sign on their forehead saying, I'm affected by somebody's addiction, it's like 99.99999% of people are affected by somebody's addiction, or they know somebody who is.
That's the crazy thing, isn't it? The chemical addiction in New Zealand, we estimate 1 in 3. And people say, no, that's far too much. No, rubbish. It is when you actually talk to the people in the addiction field. And that does not.
And you have one addict. The number of people who are affected, you've got mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and cousins and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and bosses and teachers and therapists and doctors and people who are all affected by one person's addiction. Let's learn how to deal with this so we can stop it. We can stop this. It's not rocket science.
Beautiful. Candace, you're an amazing woman. If people agree with my assessment and want to get to know you better, want to find you, maybe even work with you, where can they go?
They can go to my website. My company name is Love with Boundaries, because we need to love with boundaries. And so it's lovewithboundaries.com. And we offer a free, no strings attached, no obligation, free 30-minute consultation, usually by Zoom. If you fill out our questionnaire so we know just a little bit more about what you're going through, that's on the website. And I can get that link to you if you want, Stefan, so you can put it on your page.
Guys, look it down there. Look at it in the YouTube video, in the podcast description, in the show notes. It's all there. So Candace's information is there, guys.
And so I just want to say, all you have to do is fill out the questionnaire. As soon as we get it, we will contact you and we'll set up the 30-minute call. So just wanted to say that.
Beautiful.
Because addiction doesn't wait, so we don't wait either.
Excellent. And that's true. But equally, there is not a one-stop, 1 second fix. Candace is not giving you, hey, you just read these 10 points and your life will forever be will be different.
It might start to change your mind, but there's still going to be work to do.
Please, absolutely. But guys, look forward to it, because it's a time for change. It's a time for growth. It's a time for huge transformation in a way that you can't even fathom yet. And that's beautiful. You will become a stronger human by the end of this journey. There are no 2 ways around that. And you're going to be part of a brother and sisterhood that recognizes itself, because you are not alone. We just said there's so many people out there. There's so many people who are suffering out there, and there's a smaller amount, but still a huge amount of people who have stopped suffering. They have stopped being a survivor. They've started become thrivers, and that's like people like Candace and me. We're going
They're
out there.
Not stuck anymore. We're not stuck.
Exactly. And that is so beautiful. So we invite you to come along on this journey, because this journey is very real. It's there. It's
much more fun.
Exactly. And nowadays I'm still an addict, but I'm addicted to life. And I love that addiction. I actually have no problem with that addiction whatsoever. So, no, that's brilliant. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. This was, again, an amazing interview. And certainly, Candace, you made me think, and you made me sort of reflect on some of my behaviors as a parent, as my behavior as an addict. So, yes, it's a constant growth. And I choose nowadays to reflect on those kind of things with the help of my show. And it's beautiful. So therefore, if any of you guys out there were thinking, wow, maybe my story has meaning too, then beautiful, share your story, and maybe let maybe start connecting with other people who have got similar stories. Maybe go to a meeting and see that. And maybe therefore we also need to say one last shout out. Candace, you're doing such an amazing work. There are literally millions of people out there who are doing good work for you guys. So if Candace, if there are some reasons that people don't want to get in touch with you, maybe there might be places that are closer to you, physically, literally closer around the corner. Al-Anon, which is basically a 12-step program for the relatives. There are other sources around you. Maybe guys, if you don't really like Zoom or don't have the technical abilities and still want help, speak to your GP, to your family physician. She will probably be able to guide you towards facilities and towards institutions around you. One way or the other, you are not alone. There is help out there. There's hope out there. Do not give up. Go out there, guys. Live with passion and make this world worthwhile to be in. And that starts with you, by you looking after yourself. Candace, thank you again so much for coming on to my show. And
thank you, Stefan. It's been fun.
And you guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.
Bye, everyone.